Hello, friends. So, I may have mentioned to you that sometimes at night, not sometimes, actually every day, before I go to sleep, I do some meditation and yoga nidra and then recapitulate the day briefly and sometimes recapitulate aspects of my life. And so when I recapitulate my early childhood, I can go back to about 3 to 4 years and bring into my awareness the memory of me as a little boy, a toddler, who was sitting on the lap of his mother while she sang songs from the great epics, Mahabharata. When I think of my mother in this way, I see an image of her as she was then. I can hear or experience the sound of her voice singing. I can even experience the smell of her skin when I do that. And then at the same time, I'm overwhelmed with emotions like love and nostalgia. So, where is this experience happening when I do this? Where is its experience happening? Because obviously, there's no image in the brain, there are no sounds in the brain, there are no smells in the brain, there are no emotions in the brain as experience, and there is no image in the brain. And there is essentially no experience in the brain other than neural correlates of the brain that are also an experience. So the only conclusion is that this experience is happening in consciousness or awareness. And then if I ask myself, where is this awareness? I immediately realize awareness or consciousness has no form because it has no borders, that it is infinite and it is spaceless and it is timeless, that it is irreducible, that it is fundamental, and that it is eternal and unbounded. And I'm experiencing the experience of my mother in that awareness, which, being infinite and unbounded and timeless, is actually not even in space-time. So what conclusion then can I draw from this? The first conclusion I can draw from this very easily is that my thoughts are complex processes inseparable from images, feelings, and sensations. The second conclusion I can draw from this is that mental activities and thoughts and images have direct biological consequences because the emotions create biological experiences, feelings, and of course the images and the thoughts create biological consequences. If I'm thinking about the war in Gaza or imagining that I'm in there, then my biological response is very different. So biological responses are different. And then as a result of these biological responses, I am experiencing the world in a different way. When I think of my mother and walk the streets of New York, I notice mothers. And if I notice something, I have to ignore everything else. So it's a very selective act of attention and intention that we call noticing or perceiving. And if, of course, I'm in the fight flight response, the stressed, which is stressful thoughts, feelings, emotions, images, whatever, then I see the world as dangerous. So we can see from what I've shared with you so far that all experience arises within awareness, and the constituents of experiences, such as sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, are modifications of that awareness. So there is no other conclusion that I can draw other than awareness is the fundamental ground of experience or the subject of all experience, and that the mind, body, and world are modifications or experiences within that awareness. This, of course, supports a non dual worldview, asserting awareness as the ultimate reality, with all objects as transient manifestations within it. So it's important now to define awareness as the subject of all experience, as that in which all experience occurs, all experience is known, and of which all experience is a modification. So the argument I've just proposed touches on the so-called hard problem of consciousness, which I think is an oxymoron, because the hard problem actually asks the question, how does physical matter, like the brain, give rise to subjective experience? And my response, of course, is that even that which we call physical matter, the brain, is a perceptual changing activity in the same fundamental awareness. So the hard problem is really a oxymoron. Okay. So what do you think of this argument? What do you think of what I just shared with you? With this example of my mother. Okay, so this, what I've just shared with you, is an experience-based reasoning, and I've used a personal example to illustrate how the interplay between thoughts, feelings, and sensations shape your reality. And all of that is in the one mind, in the one universal consciousness. All that is being processed in the one mind. If this experiment leads you to draw the conclusion that consciousness, the ultimate ontological primitive, then I hope this example has served its purpose. Because when you realize that you are infinite consciousness, even the constructs of birth and death become redundant. Let me know your response.